Welcome to Thrones Rewritten. Hey, Game of Thrones fans, get ready for an original Westerosi tale that flips one of the Stark family's biggest secrets on its head. What if a hidden truth about a certain young man's origins came to light, shaking the foundations of Winterfell? On Thrones Rewritten, we're diving into a story packed with loyalty, betrayal, and the kind of drama that makes the Seven Kingdoms unforgettable. Join Ned, Catelyn, and the Stark household as they navigate a dangerous truth that could change everything. If you're hooked on epic what-ifs and love reimagining the world of ice and fire, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more. Thrones Rewritten, where every choice carves a new path. The wind howled through the godswood of Winterfell, carrying the chill of the north and the weight of secrets long buried. Ned Stark knelt before the heart tree, its carved face staring down with eyes that seemed to pierce his soul. The red leaves rustled above, whispering accusations he could not escape. For years he had carried the burden of a lie, one that protected a boy but fractured his heart and his honor. Jon Snow. His son in name, but not in truth. The boy was Lyanna's, born of her love for Rhaegar Targaryen, a secret so dangerous it could topple kingdoms. Ned had sworn to his dying sister to keep Jon safe, and he had done so, raising him as his own, though even as the lie gnawed at his marriage and his conscience. Tonight, though, something had shifted. Perhaps it was the letter from King's Landing, Robert's careless words about dragons and bastards, hinting at dangers stirring in the south. Perhaps it was the sight of Jon, now 16, sparring in the yard with Robb, his dark hair and solemn eyes so like Lyanna's that Ned's breath caught in his throat. Or perhaps it was Catelyn, his wife, whose sharp gaze had lingered on Jon too long that morning, her silence colder than the frost on the walls, and Ned could bear it no longer. The truth, dangerous as it was, demanded to be shared, not with the world, but with her. With Catelyn, who deserved more than his half-truths. He rose, brushing snow from his cloak, and made his way back to the keep. The halls of Winterfell were quiet, the children abed, the servants gone to their rest. Only the crackle of torches and the distant howl of a wolf broke the stillness. Ned climbed the stone steps to their chambers, his heart heavy but resolved. When he pushed open the door, Catelyn was there, seated by the fire, a fur draped over her shoulders. Her auburn hair caught the light, and her eyes, blue and piercing, met his with a question she did not voice. "Ned," she said, her tone careful, as if sensing the storm within him, "you've been in the God's Wood too long. The cold will take you." He closed the door behind him, the thud of it final. "Cat, I need to speak with you. There's something I've kept from you, something I should have told you long ago." Her brow furrowed, but she gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit then. Tell me." Ned took the seat, though he felt no ease in it. The fire crackled, casting shadows that danced like specters across the stone walls. He leaned forward, hands clasped, and searched for the words he had rehearsed 1,000 times but never spoken. "It's about Jon," he began, his voice low. He's not my bastard, Cat." The silence that followed was sharper than any blade. Catelyn's eyes widened, then narrowed, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. She stared at him, waiting, and Ned felt the weight of her judgment, her hurt, her confusion. "He's Lyanna's son," Ned said, the truth spilling out like blood from a wound. "Born of her and Rhaegar Targaryen. She loved him, Cat, and he her, or so she believed. When she died, she made me swear to protect the boy. I claimed him as mine to keep him safe from Robert, from anyone who'd see a Targaryen in him and call for his death." Catelyn's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with something fiercer. Shock, betrayal, and a dawning understanding. "Lyanna's," she whispered. "All these years. You let me believe he was yours. You let me hate him, Ned. And you said nothing." "I had no choice," Ned said, his voice breaking. "If Robert knew, if anyone knew, Jon would be dead. I swore an oath to my sister, Cat, and I couldn't break it, not even for you." She rose abruptly, the fur slipping from her shoulders to pool on the floor. She paced to the window, staring out at the darkened courtyard below, her back rigid. "Do you know what it cost me?" she said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Every time I saw him, I saw your betrayal. I saw a woman I'd never know, a stain in our marriage. And all this time, it was a lie. Not yours, but hers. Lyanna's." Ned stood, wanting to go to her, but knowing she needed space. "I wanted to tell you," he said. 1,000 times I wanted to, but the risk was too great. Even now, I fear what this truth could do." Catelyn turned, her face pale but composed, though her eyes burned. And why tell me now? After all these years, why burden me with this? Because you're my wife, Ned said simply. Because I trust you with my life, with our children's lives, and because Jon is growing into a man, and the world is changing. Robert speaks of dragons, of threats from across the sea. If something happens to me, someone else must know the truth to protect him. She crossed her arms, studying him as if seeing him anew. Protect him, she repeated, her voice bitter. And what of our children, Ned? Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon. What does this truth mean for them? If Jon is a Targaryen, he's a threat to everyone, and not just Robert. He's no threat, Ned said fiercely. He's a boy, raised as our son, loyal to Winterfell. He knows nothing of his blood, and I'd keep it that way if I could. Catelyn shook her head, a mirthless laugh escaping her. You think you can control this? The blood of dragons doesn't stay hidden forever. Someone will see it in him, the way he moves, the way he thinks. Gods, Ned, I've seen it myself and thought it was you. But it's her, isn't it? Lyanna's shadow in his eyes. Ned had no answer for that. He had seen it too, and it haunted him. What would you have me do, Cat? I can't undo what's done. I can only ask you to help me keep him safe. She returned to her chair, sinking into it as if the weight of the truth had exhausted her. For a long moment she stared into the fire, her fingers twisting the fabric of her gown. I don't know if I can, she said at last. I've spent years building a wall between me and that boy, and now you ask me to tear it down, to see him as... What? A nephew? A prince? A danger? As Jon, Ned said. Just Jon. She met his gaze, and for the first time he saw not anger but fear. And if the world learns what he is, if Robert comes for him, or worse, if the Targaryens across the sea hear of a lost prince, what then, Ned? Then we protect him, Ned said, his voice steady despite the dread coiling in his gut, as we protect all our children. Catelyn's lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded, a single reluctant gesture. I'll keep your secret, she said. For you, not for him. But don't ask me to love him, Ned. Not yet. It was enough for now. Ned reached for her hand, and though she didn't pull away, her fingers were cold in his grasp. They sat in silence, the fire dying to embers, as the truth settled between them like a guest who would never leave. The days that followed were strange, as if Winterfell itself sensed the shift. Catelyn moved through her duties with her usual grace, but Ned caught her watching Jon, when he trained with Sir Roderick, when he laughed with Robb, when he sat quietly with a book in the library. Her gaze was no longer cold, but it was searching, as if she were trying to unravel the boy she had never truly known. Jon, oblivious, carried on as he always had, his somber demeanor brightened by moments of warmth with his siblings. Ned, too, felt the change. The burden of the secret was lighter, shared now with Catelyn, but it came with new fears. He watched for ravens from King's Landing, dreading any hint that Robert's suspicions had turned north. He found himself lingering in the Godswood more often, praying for guidance, for strength to navigate the path ahead. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, Catelyn summoned Jon to her solar. Ned was there at her request, though she had not told him why. Jon entered, his dark eyes wary, his posture stiff. He was used to Catelyn's distance, her disapproval, and this summons must have felt like a trap. "My lady," Jon said, bowing slightly. "Lord Stark." Catelyn stood by the window, her back to him, and Ned saw the tension in her shoulders. "Jon," she said, turning to face him, "I've been unkind to you. For that I would make amends." Jon blinked, clearly taken aback. "My lady, there's no need—" "There is," she interrupted, her voice firm but not harsh. "I've judged you for things that were not your doing, and I see that now. I won't pretend to be a mother to you, but I can be fair. I want you to know that." Ned's heart ached at the words, at the effort they cost her. Jon, for his part, looked as if he'd been struck. "I thank you, my lady," he said, his voice uncertain. "I've never wanted to cause you pain." Catelyn's smile was small, strained but genuine. "I know. Go now, Jon. We'll speak again." He bowed and left, casting a bewildered glance at Ned as he went. When the door closed, Ned crossed to Catelyn, placing a hand on her arm. "That was bravely done," he said. It was necessary, she replied, her eyes distant. If I'm to carry this secret, I can't let old wounds fester. But gods, Ned, it's harder than I thought. He pulled her close and she leaned into him, her warmth a comfort against the cold uncertainty of what lay ahead. Weeks passed and the secret held. But the world beyond Winterfell was not still. A raven arrived from the wall bearing news from Maester Aemon. Wildlings were stirring beyond the wall, and there were whispers of stranger things. Shadows in the snow, eyes in the dark. Ned read the letter with a growing unease, wondering if the old Targaryen Maester sensed something of Jon's blood, even from afar. In King's Landing, Robert's court grew restless. Letters from Jon Arryn spoke of tensions with the Lannisters, of Cersei's sharp tongue and Jaime's reckless arrogance. Ned burned each letter after reading, fearing what might happen if they fell into the wrong hands. He began to prepare for a journey south, knowing he could not ignore the king's call forever. Catelyn, meanwhile, wrestled with her new role as keeper of Jon's secret. She found herself drawn to him, not as a mother, but as a guardian, watching for signs of the dragon's blood she now knew ran in his veins. She noticed his quiet strength, his loyalty to Robb, his love for Arya's wild spirit, but she saw too a restlessness in him, a longing for something he could not name. It frightened her, for it spoke of a destiny she could not control. One night, as Ned and Catelyn lay in bed, she spoke of it. "He's not like Robb," she said, her voice soft in the dark. "Robb is Winterfell, through and through. But Jon... There's something else in him, Ned. Something that doesn't belong here." Ned tightened his arm around her. "He's my son," he said, the words a reflex, a shield. "In every way that matters." But as sleep eluded him, Ned wondered if Catelyn was right. The truth had changed everything. Not just for him, not just for her, but for Jon, for Winterfell, for the North itself. And as the snow fell outside, blanketing the world in silence, Ned felt the first stirrings of a storm he could not yet name. The snows of Winterfell deepened as winter's breath tightened its grip on the north. Inside the keep, the warmth of hearths and the laughter of children held the cold at bay. But a different chill lingered in the hearts of Ned and Catelyn Stark. The truth about Jon Snow, Lyanna's son, Rhaegar Targaryen's heir, had settled between them like a blade balanced on its edge, ready to cut if mishandled. Ned had shared the secret to unburden his soul and bind Catelyn closer, but now it was she who carried its weight most keenly, watching Jon with eyes that saw not just a boy, but a shadow of dragons. Jon, unaware of the truth, felt the shift in Winterfell's air. Catelyn's sudden fairness, her careful words and fleeting glances unsettled him. He was used to her coldness, her distance a constant like the stones of the castle itself. This new attention, though not warm, was strange, as if she were measuring him for a role he didn't understand. He kept his thoughts to himself, training harder in the yard, lingering longer in the godswood, seeking answers in the silence of the heart tree. Ned, too, was restless. A summons had come from King's Landing. Robert Baratheon, his old friend, demanded his presence as Hand of the King. Jon Arryn was dead, poisoned or sickened, and none could say, and the court was a nest of vipers. Ned dreaded leaving Winterfell, not just for the danger to himself, but for what it meant for Jon. If Robert sniffed out the truth, if whispers of Targaryens reached his ears, Jon's life would be forfeit. Yet duty called, and Ned could not refuse a king. Catelyn, for her part, wrestled with her new role as Jon's silent protector. She had promised Ned to keep the secret, but it gnawed at her, reshaping her view of the boy she had resented for so long. She saw Lyanna in him now, the solemn eyes, the quiet strength, and it stirred a grief she hadn't expected. Lyanna, the sister Ned had loved, whose reckless love had birthed a secret that could burn them all. Catelyn watched Jon with Robb, their bond unbreakable yet tinged with something she now recognized as fragility. Robb was heir to Winterfell, but Jon... What was Jon? A prince in hiding, a threat to kings, a boy who belonged nowhere. One crisp morning, as frost glittered on the training yard, Catelyn stood at a window overlooking the clash of wooden swords. Jon and Robb sparred under Sir Roderick's watchful eye, their breaths puffing white in the cold. Jon moved with a grace that Robb, sturdy and strong, couldn't match, a fluidity that spoke of something beyond the north. Catelyn's hands tightened on the sill. She had promised fairness, but fairness was not trust, and trust was not love. Yet she felt a pull, a need to understand this boy who carried such a dangerous legacy. When the sparring ended, Robb clapped Jon on the shoulder, laughing, and they headed for the stables. Catelyn descended to the yard, her cloak wrapped tight against the wind. John! She called, her voice carrying over the crunch of snow. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. My lady? Walk with me, she said, gesturing toward the godswood. He hesitated, glancing at Robb, who shrugged and waved him off. John fell into step beside her, his silence wary but obedient. The godswood was hushed, the snow muffling their steps. The heart tree loomed ahead, its red eyes watching. Catelyn stopped beneath its branches, turning to face John. You've grown skilled with a sword, she said, searching for a way to begin. Sir Roderick speaks well of you. Thank you, my lady, John said, his tone cautious. I try to honor my father's name. The words stung, though he couldn't know why. Catelyn studied him, the dark hair curling at his temples, the serious set of his mouth. Your father, she said carefully, has taught you well. But there's more to a man than steel. Tell me, John, what do you want for yourself? He blinked, caught off guard. I want to serve Winterfell, to protect my family. Robb the girls, Bran, Rickon. He paused, then added softer. I know I'm a bastard, my lady. I don't dream of things I can't have. Her heart twisted. A bastard, he thought, and she had let him believe it, had let it shape him. You're more than that, she said before she could stop herself. You have worth, John, beyond what others call you. He stared at her, confusion deepening. Why are you saying this? You've never... He stopped, as if afraid to voice the years of her coldness. I was wrong, Catelyn said, the admission raw. I saw you through my own pain, not for who you are. I change that, if I can. John's jaw tightened, and he looked away toward the heart tree. I don't understand, he said, but I'm grateful, my lady, truly. She wanted to say more, to tell him he was no bastard, that his blood ran with fire and ice, but the words choked her. The secret was not hers to reveal. Not yet, perhaps not ever. Instead, she reached out a rare gesture and touched his arm. You're part of this family, she said. Remember that. He nodded, still wary, and they parted in silence. As Catelyn watched him go, she felt the weight of what she hadn't said. She was protecting him, yes, but also guarding her own heart against the danger he represented. Ned prepared for his journey south, his chambers a flurry of maps and letters. He met with his bannermen, ensuring Winterfell's strength in his absence. Robb at 17 would act as lord, guided by Maester Luwin and Sir Roderick. Catelyn would oversee the household, her sharp mind a bulwark against any threat. But John... Ned wrestled with what to do with John. One night as he and Catelyn sat by the fire, he broached the subject. I've thought of sending John to the Wall, he said, his voice low. Benjen writes of need there, and it would keep him safe from Robert's reach. Catelyn's head snapped up, her eyes sharp. The Wall? You'd send him to a life of exile, knowing what he is. It's no exile, Ned said, though the words felt hollow. He'd be with my brother, serving a purpose. The Night's Watch vows would shield him. No man there asks another's blood. And no man there rises to threaten kings, Catelyn said, her voice cutting. You're not protecting him, Ned. You're hiding him as you've always done. Ned rubbed his temples, the weight of her words pressing down. What else can I do? If I take him south, he's a target. If he stays here, someone may see what we've hidden. The Wall is honorable, Cat. He'd find a place there. She rose, pacing to the window. He's a boy, Ned, not a pawn. He deserves more than a life of ice and oaths. If he's Lyanna's son, if he's Rhaegar's, there's a fire in him you can't bury under snow. Ned stared into the fire, her words echoing his own fears. I don't know what he deserves, he admitted. I only know what keeps him alive. Catelyn turned, her face softening. Then let him stay. For now, let him grow into himself here with us. If the Wall is his path, let him choose it, not have it chosen for him. Ned nodded, reluctant but swayed. For now, he agreed. But if danger comes, Catelyn said, we face it together. John, meanwhile, felt the currents shifting around him. Robb spoke of Ned's departure, of the responsibilities he'd bear as acting lord, and John felt a pang of envy he tried to suppress. He loved Robb, would die for him, but the gap between them, lord, son, and bastard, grew sharper with every day. Arya noticed his mood, as she always did, and cornered him in the armory one afternoon. You're brooding again, she said, tossing a practice dagger from hand to hand. What's wrong? Nothing, Jon lied, polishing a blade. Just thinking. About father going south? Arya pressed. Or mother being nice to you for once? Jon's head jerked up. What do you mean? Arya grinned, oblivious to the weight of her words. She's been watching you, talking to you. Sansa says it's weird, but I think it's good. Maybe she's finally seeing you're not so bad. Jon forced a smile, but his mind raced. Arya's chatter was innocent, but it confirmed what he'd sensed. Catelyn's change was real, and it unnerved him. That night he sought out the God's Wood again, kneeling before the heart tree as Ned so often did. Who am I? He whispered, the words swallowed by the snow. The tree offered no answer, but the wind seemed to carry a faint, distant song, a melody of fire, now not ice. Ned's departure loomed, and Winterfell buzzed with preparations. Catelyn threw herself into her duties, but she couldn't shake her growing unease about Jon. She began to notice things she'd overlooked. His quiet intensity when he read tales of old heroes, his bond with the direwolf pup he'd named Ghost, whose red eyes mirrored the heart trees. She wondered if the old gods knew what she did, if they watched Jon with the same wariness she felt. One evening she found him in the library, a dusty tome open before him. The title caught her eye, The Songs of the Dragons, a history of House Targaryen. Her heart skipped, but she kept her voice steady. You're reading of dragons, she said, taking a seat across from him. Jon looked up, startled. Just stories, my lady. Maester Luwin says they're gone, but they were real once. They were, Catelyn said, her throat tight. Dangerous, beautiful creatures like their masters. Jon's eyes flickered with curiosity. The Targaryens. Father says they were mad, some of them. Not all, Catelyn said, choosing her words with care. Some were brave, some foolish. Like any family, they were human. He nodded, thoughtful, and returned to his book. Catelyn watched him, her mind racing. Was it chance that drew him to such tales, or something deeper stirring in his blood? She left him there, her resolve hardening. She would protect him, as Ned asked, but she would also watch him for Winterfell's sake as much as his own. The day Ned left, snow fell in thick curtains, cloaking the world in white. He embraced his children, his words to Jon lingering longer than the others. Be true, he said, gripping Jon's shoulders. To yourself. To Winterfell. Jon nodded, puzzled but obedient, and watched as Ned's party vanished into the storm. Winterfell felt emptier without him, but life pressed on. Robb took to his role with earnest determination, leaning on Catelyn's counsel. Jon, ever loyal, stayed close, helping where he could. But Catelyn saw the restlessness in him grow, mirrored by ghosts pacing at his side. She began to include him more, inviting him to meals, asking his thoughts on minor matters. It was a delicate dance, building trust without revealing too much. One night a raven arrived from the wall. Benjen Stark wrote of wildling raids, of shadows moving in the deep woods. He asked for men, for aid, and mentioned Jon by name. The lad's strong. He'd do well here if you'd send him. Catelyn burned the letter, her decision made. Jon would stay, at least until Ned returned. But the wall's call lingered, a reminder of the world beyond Winterfell's walls. As spring's first whispers stirred the north, a stranger arrived, a bard claiming to seek shelter. His songs were old ones, of dragons and lost loves. And Jon listened, rapt, as the man sang of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Catelyn, hearing the tune, felt ice in her veins. She dismissed the bard with coin and a warning, but his presence left a mark. Jon asked questions about Lyanna, about the war, about his mother, whom he still believed unknown. Catelyn deflected, but each lie cost her more. One evening, alone in her solar, she found Jon waiting. His face was set, his eyes searching. "My lady," he said, "there's something I need to ask." Her heart pounded, but she nodded. "Speak, Jon." He took a breath as if steeling himself. "Why do you look at me like you know something I don't? Like I'm different?" Catelyn froze, the secret teetering on her tongue. She saw Lyanna in him then, clear as day, and Rhaegar's fire behind his eyes. "You're not different," she lied, her voice steady. "You're a Stark, Jon. That's enough." He held her gaze unconvinced, then nodded and left. Catelyn sank into her chair, trembling. The truth was unraveling, thread by thread. and she feared what it would weave when it broke free. In King's Landing, Ned navigated a court of lies, his thoughts often straying to Winterfell. Letters from Catelyn spoke of peace, of Jon's growth, but he sensed her unease between the lines. Robert, drunk and bitter, ranted at Targaryens, of a girl across the sea with her brother plotting to reclaim their throne. Ned listened, silent, and prayed Jon's secret would hold. But secrets like dragons have a way of waking. In Winterfell, Jon dreamed of fire, of a woman's voice calling his name, of a wolf with wings. And Catelyn, watching him, knew the storm was coming, whether she willed it or not. Winterfell stood resolute against the thaw of spring, its gray stones glistening under a tentative sun. The snows had retreated, leaving muddy paths and swollen streams, but within the castle's walls, a deeper tension simmered. Catelyn Stark carried the secret of Jon Snow's true parentage like an ember in her hands, Lyanna's son, Rhaegar Targaryen's heir, a boy whose blood could ignite wars. She had promised Ned to protect him, and she had tried, weaving a fragile trust with Jon, while guarding the truth from his own searching heart. But secrets, like rivers, rode their banks over time, and Catelyn felt the ground shifting beneath her. Jon, now 17, was no longer the quiet boy who accepted his place as a bastard. The restlessness she had seen in him had grown sharper, fed by dreams he didn't share and questions he dared not ask. He trained with a ferocity that worried Robb, bonded with Ghost in a way that seemed beyond natural, and lingered in the Godswood as if seeking answers the heart tree wouldn't give. Catelyn watched him, her fairness toward him now a mask for her fear, not of Jon himself, but of what his blood might awaken. Ned's absence stretched on, his letters from King's Landing sparse and guarded. Robert's court was a mire of intrigue, with Lannisters circling and whispers of rebellion across the narrow sea. Catelyn burned each letter after reading, dreading any hint that Ned's secret had slipped. She ruled Winterfell in his stead, guiding Robb as acting lord, but her thoughts were with Jon, whose presence felt like a storm waiting to break. The trouble began with a raven from the wall. Benjen Stark, Ned's brother, wrote of wielding incursions and stranger tales, corpses rising in the snow, blue eyes in the dark. He asked again for Jon, claiming the Night's Watch needed men like him. Catelyn read the letter alone in her solar, her fingers trembling as she traced Benjen's words. The lad's got strength, Cat. He belongs here where blood doesn't matter. She tore the parchment to pieces, her decision unchanged. The wall was no place for a Targaryen, not when the world was stirring with echoes of dragons. But Benjen's words lingered, and Catelyn began to notice others watching Jon. Maids whispering when he passed, stable hands eyeing Ghost with unease. Winterfell was loyal, but loyalty could falter under suspicion, and Jon's difference was no longer just her secret to keep. She doubled her efforts to include him, inviting him to councils with Robb, praising his insights in front of Maester Luwin. Yet each gesture felt like a step toward a precipice, as if she were drawing him closer only to push him into danger. Jon sensed it too. One afternoon, as they walked to the battlements to inspect repairs, he stopped, his dark eyes fixed on her. "My lady," he said, his voice low, "you've been kind these past months, but it's not natural." "Why?" Catelyn's heart thudded, but she kept her face calm. "I told you, Jon. I was wrong to judge you. I'm trying to make amends." He shook his head, frustration breaking through. "It's more than that. You look at me like I'm a puzzle you can't solve, like I'm not what I seem." "You're a Stark," she said, the lie bitter on her tongue. "That's enough." But Jon's gaze didn't waver. "I'm not, though, not truly. Robb's a Stark. I'm something else. I feel it, even if I don't know what it is." Her breath caught. He was too close, his instincts brushing against the truth she guarded. "You're Ned's son," she said firmly, gripping the stone parapet. "Don't let dreams or doubts tell you otherwise." He nodded, but his silence was heavy, and Catelyn knew she'd only delayed the inevitable. That night she prayed to the Seven, not for forgiveness, but for strength. The gods offered no answer, and the old gods of the north, Ned's gods, seemed to watch her with the same silent judgment as the heart tree. The storm broke with the arrival of a stranger, a man clad in worn leathers, his face scarred and his accent tinged with the free cities. He called himself a merchant seeking trade with Winterfell's smiths, but his eyes lingered too long on Jon, and his questions probed too deep. Catelyn, ever vigilant, hosted him in the great hall, keeping Jon at her side to gauge the man's intent. The merchant spoke of Essos, of a silver-haired girl with dragons, and Jon listened, rapt, his face betraying a hunger Catelyn couldn't ignore. That night she summoned the man to her solar under pretense of trade terms. "Who sent you?" she demanded, her voice cold as the wind outside. "Speak plain, or you'll find no welcome here." The merchant smiled, unperturbed. "No one sent me, my lady, but I've eyes, and I know a dragon when I see one. The boy's no Stark, whatever you call him." Catelyn's blood ran cold, but she kept her composure. "You see what you wish to see. Jon is my husband's son, nothing more." "Is he?" The man leaned forward, his voice a whisper. "There's talk across the sea of a lost prince, born in blood. The Dothraki speak of it, and the girl with her beasts listens. If it's true, he's worth more than gold." Catelyn stood, her hand on the dagger hidden in her sleeve. "You'll leave at dawn," she said. "Speak of this to anyone, and you'll find the North has no mercy for liars." He left, but the damage was done. Catelyn doubled the guard, sent riders to track the man's path, and forbade Jon from leaving the castle grounds. She told herself it was caution, but fear drove her, fear that the world was closing in, that the secret was slipping through her fingers. Jon chafed under the restrictions, his frustration spilling over in the yard. He sparred with Robb until both were bruised, ignoring Sir Roderick's calls for restraint. Afterward, as they sat panting by the forge, Robb clapped a hand on his shoulder. "What's eating you, Jon? You're fighting like you're at war." Jon stared at the ground, ghost red eyes gleaming nearby. "I don't know," he said. "It's like something's pulling at me. Something I'm supposed to find." Robb frowned, his loyalty warring with confusion. "You're here, with us. What else do you need?" Jon didn't answer, but the question haunted him. That night he slipped into the godswood, ghost at his heels. The heart tree's face seemed to shift in the moonlight, its eyes not judging but calling. He knelt, his breath visible in the chill air. "Show me," he whispered. Who am I?" The wind answered, a low, mournful howl that carried a woman's voice, faint and fleeting. "Jon," it said, and he froze, his heart pounding. Ghost whined, pressing against him, and Jon saw a flash in his mind. A woman with dark hair, a man with silver, a tower burning under a blood-red sky. He stumbled back, the vision fading, but the truth lingered, sharp as a blade. Catelyn knew something had changed when Jon sought her out the next morning. His face was pale, his eyes shadowed, and he carried himself like a man bracing for a blow. "My lady," he said, closing the door to her solar. "I need to know the truth." Her stomach nodded, but she gestured to a chair. "What truth, Jon?" He didn't sit. "About me, about my mother. I've dreamed things, seen things. A woman who looks like father calling my name. A man with a crown of fire. I'm not just a bastard, am I?" Catelyn's hands trembled and she clasped them to hide it. She had dreaded this moment, planned for it, but now, faced with his raw need, her resolve wavered. "Jon," she began, "some things are better left buried." "No," he said, his voice rising. "I've lived my life in shadows, my lady. If you know something, tell me, please." She rose, crossing to the window to buy time. The courtyard below was alive with servants, but her world narrowed to this room, this boy, this truth. She thought of Ned, of his trust in her, of the oath she'd sworn, but she thought, too, of Jon, of the boy who'd borne her resentment, who'd loved her children despite her, who stood now on the edge of a truth that could destroy him. "Sit," she said finally, turning to face him, "and listen." He obeyed, his eyes never leaving hers. Catelyn took a breath, her voice steadier despite the storm within. "You're not Ned's son," she said, and saw him flinch, though he didn't speak. "You're Lyanna's, his sister. She loved a man, Rhaegar Targaryen, and you were born of that love. Ned claimed you as his to protect you because the world would kill you for your blood." Jon's face went still, as if carved from the heart tree itself. "Targaryen," he whispered, and the word foreign on his tongue. "I'm a dragon?" "You're Jon," Catelyn said fiercely. "Nothing changes that. But your blood is dangerous, Jon. Robert would see you dead, and others across the sea might use you for their own ends." He stood abruptly, pacing to the hearth. Ghost followed a silent shadow. "Why tell me now?" he asked, his voice raw. "Why not let me live the lie?" "Because you're not a child," she said, "and because I trust you to carry this as I have. Ned wanted you safe, but he also wanted you strong. You needed to know." John's hands clenched, and she saw the war in him. Shock, anger, fear, and something deeper, a spark of purpose. "What do I do?" he asked, turning to her. "If I'm this prince, what am I supposed to do?" Catelyn crossed to him, stopping short of a touch. "You live," she said. "You stay loyal to Winterfell, to your family. You guard this secret as we have, and you find your place." He nodded, but his eyes were distant, already chasing a horizon she couldn't see. "Thank you," he said, and left, Ghost trailing behind. Catelyn sank into her chair, trembling. She had broken Ned's trust, but she had given Jon what he deserved, a truth to shape his own path. The consequences, she knew, would come. The days that followed were taut with unspoken change. Jon moved through Winterfell like a ghost, his demeanor quiet, but his eyes alive with new weight. He trained, he laughed with Arya, he counseled Robb, but Catelyn saw the difference, a man awakening to his own power. Ghost was never far, and the direwolf's presence seemed to grow, as if sensing the fire in Jon's blood. Robb noticed too and cornered Catelyn one evening. "What's wrong with Jon?" he asked, his blue eyes troubled. "He's distant, like he's carrying something I can't see." Catelyn forced a smile. "He's growing up, Robb. We all carry burdens in time." Robb wasn't convinced, but he let it go, his trust in her absolute. Catelyn envied that trust, knowing she'd betrayed it by telling Jon the truth. She wrote to Ned, cryptic but urgent, hinting at what she'd done. She prayed he'd understand, but the Raven's flight felt like a harbinger of ruin. The ruin came swiftly. A rider arrived from White Harbor bearing news of a ship from Essos, a ship carrying men who asked after a dark-haired boy in the north. Catelyn's heart sank. The merchant had talked, or someone else had, and the secret was no longer hers to hold. She doubled the guard again, sent word to loyal bannermen, and called Jon to her solar. "They're coming for you," she said without preamble. "Men who know what you are, or suspect it. We can't stay here." Jon's face hardened, but he didn't flinch. "Where, then? The wall?" "No," Catelyn said. "South to Ned. He'll know what to do. We'll go in secret, with men I trust." He nodded, and she saw no fear in him, only resolve. "I won't bring harm to Winterfell," he said. "I swear it." "I know," she said. And for the first time she felt a flicker of pride in him, not as Lyanna's son, but as Jon. They left under cover of night, a small party cloaked in darkness, Jon, Catelyn, Ghost, and a handful of sworn swords. Robb protested, but Catelyn silenced him with a mother's command, promising to return. Winterfell faded behind them, its towers swallowed by the night, and Catelyn felt a pang of loss, as if she were leaving more than stone behind. The road south was perilous, with spring rains turning paths to mire. They avoided towns, camping in woods, where Ghost hunted and Jon kept watch. He spoke little, but Catelyn saw him grappling with his truth, his eyes often lost in the fire. One night, as they sat by a stream, he broke the silence. "Do you hate me for it?" he asked, his voice low. "For what I am?" Catelyn looked at him, the boy she'd resented, the man she'd chosen to protect. "I hated a lie," she said. "Not you. Not now." He nodded, and something passed between them. Not love, but understanding. It was enough. They reached the Riverlands when the ambush came. Men in black cloaks, their blades gleaming under moonlight, struck without warning. Catelyn's guards fought bravely, but numbers overwhelmed them. Jon, sword in hand, cut through two attackers, Ghost a blur of teeth and fury at his side. Catelyn wielded her dagger, her heart pounding as she shouted for Jon to run. He didn't. He fought to her side, shielding her as the last guard fell. The leader, a man with a Bravosy accent, stepped forward, his eyes locked on Jon. "You're the one," he said. "The dragon's son!" Jon froze, but Catelyn didn't. She lunged, her dagger finding the man's throat. He fell, gurgling, and the others hesitated, giving Jon time to grab her arm. "Go!" he roared, and they ran, Ghost leading the way into the dark. They stumbled through the woods, bloodied and breathless, until dawn broke. Catelyn's side ached from a shallow cut, but Jon was unharmed, his face grim. "They knew," he said, his voice hollow. "How?" "It doesn't matter," Catelyn said, though it did. "We keep moving, to Ned." They reached King's Landing weeks later, ragged and weary, disguised as pilgrims. Ned met them in a shadowed inn, his face lined with worry. He embraced Catelyn, then Jon, his eyes searching. "You told him," he said to her, not a question. "I had to," she said. "They came for him, Ned. The secret's out." Ned's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "You did right," he said. And Catelyn felt a weight lift, though another settled in its place. He turned to Jon, gripping his shoulders. "You're my son," he said, fierce and low. "No matter what blood runs in you, we'll face this together." Jon nodded, but his eyes held a fire Ned couldn't tame, a fire that spoke of dragons, of a destiny no wall could hold. Catelyn watched them, her heart torn between love and dread. The truth was free now, a beast loosed upon the world, and none of them could predict where it would fly. In the Red Keep, Robert raged about Targaryens, oblivious to the boy under his nose. Across the sea, a silver-haired girl dreamed of a brother she didn't know, her dragons stirring in their sleep. And in Winterfell, Robb held the North, unaware that his brother carried a crown of fire and ice. Jon stood on the inn's balcony that night, Ghost at his side, staring at the stars. Catelyn joined him, silent, and for a moment they were not lady and bastard, not guardian and secret, but two souls bound by truth that had changed them both. "What now?" Jon asked, his voice soft. "We live," Catelyn said, echoing her words from Winterfell, "and we fight." He nodded, and the wind carried a distant roar, as if the world itself knew what was coming. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you love diving into epic Star Wars stories and sci-fi adventures, check out my second YouTube channel, The Force Fiction. The link's in the description. Subscribe and join the journey.